All right. So, again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you coming up and spending part of your evening with us. And I'll start off with the same question that I've asked your predecessors, which is basically the reason for running for this position. You know, there's one of the things that I'm always curious about is if it was kind of a light bulb coming on moment, something that you contemplated for years, somebody that was behind you saying, "Hey, you need to run for that position." What was it for you?
Well, this is something that I have wanted to do for a long time. You know, many of the attorneys know that I've made efforts before. I ran in 2005, and I have a passion for public service. I think it's a really a higher calling, and I do a lot of work in public service. But now I want to devote myself entirely to do this as a judge. I hope that my talents and my experiences would lead me to be able to do this job and make the people in the county proud.
As far as work experience, tell us a little bit about your professional background and specifically how that makes you the candidate that the folks here should vote for come election day.
Well, I began my legal career in the Chicago area back in 1982. I began doing commodities and securities civil litigation in the federal court system. I then went to practice just outside of Chicago. I was a public defender for a number of years, so I did a lot of criminal defense work. I did a lot of land use cases. I did family law up there in 1992. Came down here to Texas, actually with a transfer with my wife's job, and I began spending more time doing family law. I really practiced in all areas of law that are practiced by this court, but I decided to specialize in that area. As attorneys, we tend to get more, as you go along, you get more specialized in areas. And so I'm board certified in family law. I've now been practicing law for 34 consecutive years. And I've gotten I think I've accomplished a lot of good things during that time.
Now, what percentage of attorneys are board certified in family law or in any specialty?
About 2% of the attorneys in the state of Texas are board certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. There are several different types of specialties, but I think across the board it's about a 2%.
And is that something that you see as a particular advantage for you, given the type of cases that would be heard in this court?
It certainly does in the area of family law. The process to become board certified, actually to apply to become board certified is fairly comprehensive to begin with, and then it requires that you take an exam, which in family law has about a 34% pass rate, including those who have taken it 3 and 4 times. It does recognize you as having a certain level of competence in that area, and in turn, my malpractice rates are higher because they expect more of someone who's become board certified.
Okay. Campaign financing. One of the, and again, this is a question I've asked your other opponents. As a citizen, one of the things that I'm always curious about, especially the whole notion in Texas of judges having a campaign, and those campaigns have to be financed. I assume primarily by other lawyers, law practices, things like that. What's your position on campaign financing for judicial candidates?
Wow, I wish that it weren't necessary. It is a necessary evil in what we do. We are in a political system, and as such, it does cost quite a bit to run a successful campaign in a county of over 900,000 people. So, although it is uncomfortable probably for a lot of us to go out and ask for money, we need to do that. Then really after that comes a question of you have to maintain your integrity and your impartialness afterwards, knowing that people have helped you. You still need to do the right thing in the cases that you have.
Okay. The cases that you've worked with currently, any that stand out as cases that went on to be appealed? Any particular standout cases that would give us an example of what particular challenges you've faced in the courtroom and won or lost, and why?
Well, I don't practice appellate law as a matter of choice. I think when I was in the Chicago area, I did, but I don't handle appeals directly, and I've not had any of my cases appealed that I've been a part of.
Candidates often are proud of particular endorsements that they've received. Any particular endorsements that you've received that you're especially proud of?
Well, I've spent most of the last several years really spending a lot of time in the local community. I have endorsements from a lot of local business people, David Craig from Craig International, the Pogue family, who has Pogue Construction, quite a number of, most of the McKinney City Council, and the mayor of McKinney. I have, let me think, put me on the spot there, it's hard to remember all of them, but I do have their assistance.
Okay. And I'll plagiarize, in a sense, a question from the audience from earlier. This is obviously a conservative group, and one of the things that we're looking for are conservative candidates. Now, for those of us who've been asked the question, time and again, what makes you a Tea Partier or what makes you a conservative? We have kind of an answer, but for yourself, I mean, would you define yourself personally and your judicial style as conservative? And if so, how do you define that?
First of all, I would define conservative as following the rule of law. When there is as a judge, you're not there to make new law, you're there to follow the law and to follow the Constitution, whether it's a state constitution or the U.S. Constitution. And I think as judges, we're not supposed to be activists to try to change that. I think that the U.S. Constitution should be very strictly construed. For example, in the recent decision that was made this summer by the Supreme Court regarding gay marriage, I think that the Supreme Court denied the opportunity for people to discuss and debate the issue of whether that was appropriate. Rather, the Supreme Court became very activist and gave a view of the Constitution which said it's a very changing document. And so I think that the Constitution says what it says, and we need to follow what the Constitution says. And so as lawyers, we're not there to change that. So that would be, my style would be to follow those principles.
Now, what about a change through Governor Abbott's suggestion that Texas take the lead in calling a convention of states or an Article 5, or a convention is allowed for under Article 5 of the Constitution to propose amendments to the Constitution? Because one of the things that also is again, frustrating as a citizen looking at what our representatives and judiciary, probably the judiciary almost more so in particular, are up against is following the Constitution, and yet the Constitution seems to have been distorted into something far different from how it was framed. What's your position on fixing that?
Well, I think that the Constitution, as it's currently framed, is appropriate. We need to follow it implicitly. But there are things that, if we're going to do things that are going to amend it, rather than do it through judicial activism, that needs to be done by the vote of the people to amend the Constitution and create new amendments to it. And we've done that before, and we could certainly do it again on very important issues.
Okay. Questions? Yes, well, in fairness, because I haven't asked the other candidates, I won't specifically. Oh, yes, we have a question.
I've got a question. I think, given that we're dealing with Republican primaries, all of us are going to say that we're going to legislate from the bench. For the Democratic primaries, maybe not. There's been a disturbing trend in Texas with Governor Perry and UT Board of Regents, Mike Sullivan, to use the legal system to try to punish political opponents. Can you give us your views on that?
I think that we follow the laws, and I think that I'll tell you, I think we all kind of know which some of the things we're referring to here, but I think that we need to. I think many people are improperly motivated for a lot of the cases that are brought, especially for political reasons. And I think motivations. I think judges will see that a lot, where you'll see that some people bring cases that are not. What's the term I'm looking for? Yeah, I mean, the motivations of the individual who brought that suit are not very good. I think that once there is something is in the system, the judges need to strictly interpret the laws and call balls and strikes. We're there to listen to the facts, to be the gatekeeper for the evidence that needs to be presented, and then give the proper weight to that evidence. And I know that I would further look at the laws, whether it's brought against a political official or otherwise, and we need to consider what is the intent of the law. Why was it designed? There's always the legislators, whenever they make a law, will give some of the reasons behind it, and many times we have to look at that to understand what does it mean, so that we're making decisions that are fair and just for everyone who comes into the system. Is that answering your question?
We're looking for the judge who says, you know what, I want to do the right thing and law be damned. But in a way, that's unfortunately sometimes that's the in a way almost the only legitimate answer to some of those questions, because some of the ways that some of the laws have been distorted in some of the case law that's now become precedent has really put judges in a bind. And I'll have to admit I don't recall the technical term for how this what the Supreme Court says rules and what other courts underneath them have to follow. They just have to
stare decisis. Actually, I would charge more for using Latin when I'm attorney.
Me too. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I think simple asset forfeiture has been controversial in some cases. Is that a judicial jurisdiction or a legislative problem, or?
Can you explain a little bit more of what you mean?
Well, when you're arrested or suspected before you're convicted of certain crimes, the agency can seize your property or your money if they think that it's been involved, but it's even before you're convicted. And some people don't get their property back if they've been found innocent.
I don't see why they wouldn't be returned as long as it's not an element of the crime. I think that it is appropriate in the cases where there's a criminal offense to make sure that property, we're entitled to take it, so you put it aside if it's relevant to that, and it should be returned if they're found to be innocent. I can't point to any instances where I personally know that hasn't happened.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.